In the small town of Hollow Hill, there stood an old, dilapidated mansion on a hill that locals warned never to visit after dark. The house was said to be haunted by the restless spirit of a woman who had tragically died there many years ago. As the story goes, the woman had been driven mad by the loss of her husband, who had mysteriously vanished without a trace. Consumed by grief, she locked herself inside the mansion, refusing to leave. Rumor had it that she had made a pact with dark forces to bring her husband back from the dead, but the price was her own soul. Many who had dared to enter the house claimed to have heard her tormented cries in the dead of night. Others reported seeing apparitions of a woman wandering the halls, her face contorted with anguish. A group of curious teenagers decided to explore the legend for themselves one fateful Halloween night. Armed with flashlights and nerves of steel, they ventured into the mansion, determined to uncover the truth behind the haunting. As they stepped into the house, an icy chill engulfed them, and a feeling of foreboding settled in their bones. The air seemed thick with despair, and the faint sound of sobbing echoed through the empty halls. As they ascended the creaking staircase, a sudden gust of wind extinguished their flashlights, plunging them into darkness. Panic ensued as they fumbled in the blackness, trying to find their way back to the entrance. In the midst of their terror, a dim light flickered at the end of the hallway. Drawn to it like moths to a flame, they cautiously approached, their hearts pounding in their chests. To their horror, they found themselves in a room filled with eerie portraits of the woman and her husband. The paintings seemed to come alive, the subjects' eyes following their every move. Unearthly whispers filled the air, drowning out the sound of their own panicked breaths. Desperate to escape, they retraced their steps, but the house seemed to have transformed into a labyrinth, with endless corridors leading them in circles. Each turn brought them closer to the heart of the haunting, and the spirit's wailing grew louder, tormenting their souls. With each passing minute, the house's malevolent energy intensified, and the teenagers realized they were no longer alone. Shadows danced on the walls, and unseen hands tugged at their clothes, pulling them further into the abyss. Finally, with their strength waning, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber in the heart of the mansion. Inside, they found an ancient journal filled with the woman's desperate pleas for her husband's return. But as they read the haunting entries, they unwittingly unleashed the full fury of the spirit. The walls began to tremble, and a bone-chilling scream echoed through the room, freezing them in terror. In a last-ditch effort to escape, they recited a prayer they had heard from local folklore. Miraculously, the ground ceased to shake, and the chilling cries subsided. The spirit's anger had been appeased, at least temporarily. Exhausted and shaken to the core, they fled the mansion and never looked back. The haunted house of Hollow Hill became a place of forbidden terror, a chilling reminder of the horrors that could lurk in the shadows of even the most innocent of places. In a forgotten corner of town, there stood an abandoned asylum that was said to be cursed. Its towering walls and rusted gates loomed ominously, a haunting reminder of its grim past. Years ago, the asylum was a place of torment and despair, where those deemed mentally ill were subjected to cruel and inhumane treatments. Patients were locked away in dank cells, their sanity slipping away day by day. The asylum's reputation for cruelty and death drew thrill-seekers and ghost hunters from far and wide. Among them was a group of friends who saw the asylum as an opportunity for a thrilling adventure. They entered the decaying building with cameras and recorders in hand, eager to capture evidence of the paranormal. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding, and a pervasive feeling of being watched sent shivers down their spines. As they ventured deeper into the asylum, they heard whispers and disembodied voices echoing through the corridors. Shadows danced on the walls, and the temperature plummeted as if a malevolent presence surrounded them. In one particularly eerie hallway, they encountered a row of cell doors, each adorned with the names of former patients. Behind the doors, they could hear faint cries and pleas for help, as if the tortured souls of the past were still trapped within. Suddenly, one of the friends claimed to have seen a dark figure darting from one cell to another. Fear consumed them, and they made a hasty retreat, trying to find their way back to the entrance. But the asylum seemed to have a malevolent will of its own. Doors slammed shut behind them, and the sound of echoing footsteps followed their every move. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. In a desperate attempt to escape, they tried to force open a barred window, but an unseen force pushed back, as if warning them to stay away. The sense of being held captive by malevolent spirits only intensified. As the night wore on, they found themselves in a room filled with old medical equipment, rusted and stained with the remnants of the asylum's dark past. Among the discarded tools, they discovered an old diary belonging to one of the doctors. The diary contained horrifying accounts of the experiments performed on the patients, detailing the doctor's descent into madness as he became obsessed with unlocking the secrets of the human mind. As they read the entries, the air grew suffocating, and the room seemed to close in on them. A chilling wind blew through the corridors, and the asylum seemed to come alive with malevolent energy. In a desperate bid to break free from the asylum's grasp, they burned the diary, hoping to release the trapped spirits and appease the tormented souls of the past. With a resounding crash, the doors swung open, and they ran for their lives, leaving the asylum behind in a frenzy of terror. The haunting experience had forever changed them, and they vowed never to seek thrills in the presence of malevolent spirits again. In a quaint village surrounded by dense woods, a chilling legend circulated among the locals. It spoke of a sinister shadow that lurked in the heart of the forest, preying on unsuspecting wanderers who strayed from the beaten path. The villagers warned that the shadow was an ancient malevolent entity, cursed to haunt the woods for eternity. It was said to have a voracious appetite for human souls, and its unsettling presence left a trail of terror in its wake. A group of curious college students decided to put the legend to the test, embarking on a midnight hike into the dark woods. Armed with flashlights and an air of bravado, they dismissed the warnings as mere superstitions. As they delved deeper into the forest, an eerie silence enveloped them. The trees loomed like spectral sentinels, their gnarled branches casting haunting shadows on the forest floor. As they ventured further, the air grew heavy with an indescribable malevolence, and an overwhelming sense of dread settled in their hearts. Yet, fueled by youthful curiosity, they pushed forward, ignoring the nagging feeling that they were being watched. Unbeknownst to them, the sinister shadow had indeed taken notice of their presence. It slithered through the undergrowth, cloaked in darkness, its malevolent gaze fixed on the group of unsuspecting students. The forest seemed to conspire against them, as if trying to lead them deeper into its treacherous heart. The path they followed twisted and turned, leading them in circles, and their surroundings morphed into an ever-shifting labyrinth. An unsettling fog crept in, obscuring their vision and making it difficult to discern the true path. Panic began to seep into their minds as they realized they were lost, trapped in the clutches of the ominous woods. Whispers echoed through the fog, ghostly voices that seemed to emanate from all directions. They called out to one another, trying to stay together, but the woods played tricks on their senses, distorting sound and direction. In the midst of their confusion, they spotted a flickering light in the distance. It appeared to be a lantern, and with a renewed sense of hope, they followed it like moths to a flame, convinced it would lead them to safety. As they drew closer, however, they realized that the light emitted an unnatural glow, casting an eerie pallor over the surrounding trees. Dread washed over them as they noticed that the lantern was suspended in midair, seemingly floating without any source of support. Their instincts screamed at them to turn back, to flee from whatever malevolent force lurked ahead. But curiosity and fear held them captive, unable to tear their eyes away from the haunting spectacle. With hesitant steps, they moved closer to the floating lantern. The air grew colder, and their breaths formed misty clouds in front of their faces. The unsettling silence was broken by a chilling laughter that seemed to echo through the woods. Then, they saw it, the sinister shadow materialized before them, a towering, indistinct figure that seemed to shift and contort like liquid darkness. Its presence was suffocating, and they could feel its malevolence seeping into their very souls. Frozen in terror, they watched as the shadow extended a twisted, skeletal hand towards them, beckoning them closer. The unnatural glow of the lantern intensified, illuminating the entity's horrifying visage. In that moment, instinct took over. They turned on their heels and ran, ignoring the confusion of the labyrinthine forest and their fear of getting lost. Every fiber of their being screamed at them to escape the grasp of the sinister shadow. The woods seemed to come alive, with branches reaching out to ensnare them and roots rising from the ground to trip them. But they pushed on, driven by sheer terror and the desperate need to survive. As they neared the edge of the forest, the malevolent presence began to recede, its laughter fading into the distance. With the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees, they stumbled out of the woods, their hearts pounding in their chests. They collapsed on the grass, gasping for breath, grateful for the safety of daylight. The sinister shadow had not claimed them, but the experience had left an indelible mark on their souls. From that day forward, they heeded the warnings of the villagers and never dared to venture into the haunted woods again. The sinister shadow remained a chilling memory, a reminder that some legends are best left undisturbed. As time passed, they went their separate ways, but the bond forged in the face of that malevolent entity remained unbreakable. They carried the weight of that haunting experience, a shared secret that bound them together forever. And so, the legend of the sinister shadow in the woods persisted, a cautionary tale passed down through generations. The villagers learned to respect the ancient entity, leaving it undisturbed in the dark heart of the forest, lest it ever be awakened again.